G'day everyone and welcome back to another episode as we prepare ourselves for Team Champs 2026. By now, I would have gotten through basically all of the challenger bracket teams that I was able to get through, and so we're finally transitioning into Premier bracket teams. First cab off the rank is Victor the Dictator, head coach, entrepreneur of Uplift Performance. How are you going, Victor?
Very good, JP.
Good to have you back on. As I said to you earlier, you're the first Premier bracket team that we're interviewing. You just scraped in because you didn't actually make it in last year. So a bit of context for everybody. Uplift had a bit of an average meet last year, some challenging logistical nightmares, but didn't make it into the Premier bracket initially. A couple of teams chose not to come back, namely Avia and Josh Sim, I believe, Performance, not coming back. So some spots opened up in the Premier bracket and you were next in line. So a little bit of a whiplashy kind of experience, I suppose, there, Victor, not making it and then kind of scraping it anyway.
Yeah, it was definitely like a bit of a surprise when I heard your text. I guess just for context, last year, one of the athletes part of the team didn't show up on the day. So one of the athletes, Ari, who's now also the head coach for Team Nexus.
Shout out Nexus.
Yeah, he jumped in on the day, no notice, and competed for part of the team. Absolutely like unpeaked. We weren't even like, he just came off the back of Mega National. So his training was quite broad and much more towards just building up general qualities. But yeah, he jumped in, was able to do pretty decently, but because of the last minute change after the final cutoff date, I think we had a couple of points taken away from that. And I think we were just 1 point under what that cutoff for the Premier's bracket was, which at the end of the day, like it is what it is. And I was always just so appreciative that we could have a fourth lifter compete at the comp, especially not being there. I remember I was in midst of my transit to Germany last year to the Worlds, and remember like dealing with that, like making phone calls, like on my phone, texting, trying to really figure things out. But yeah, it all worked out.
Yeah, of course, that's another factor as well, is that you weren't even there last year. I forget, you were on the way to Worlds. A number of other teams as well. Jack Hamilton, at the time, Jack Dunn was on the way to Worlds. So a number of the coaches, it'll be... Fortunately, this year, there's not a clash with the IPF Worlds. We actually haven't spoken, or at least we haven't spoken publicly about what happened last year. A year on, how are you feeling about it? Like, obviously, it's quite a stressful event. Like you said, you're trying to handle text messages, phone calls. You know, you're going into... what's the word I'm looking for? Like... you're trying to put out this massive fire while you're also trying to travel across the world. Must have been very stressful.
Yeah, it was pretty stressful in the time, but I'm just so privileged to have such amazing people to work with and people who are really just team focused and really think about that bigger picture. So yeah, like even though I remember Ari was telling me afterwards, he was helping out in the first session, then he had to go for weigh-ins, and yeah, it was like a very big day for himself. But yeah, it just makes me feel so grateful to have such great people part of the team.
Of course. It's interesting you mentioning Ari, that last year he lifted for you, but this year he's actually the head coach of Nexus, shout out number 2, and they're bringing their own team. But you're still coaching Ari, of course. But He's not in your team. He's coaching another team. There's a couple of this going around. You know, I mean, powerlifting is a small world. There's a number of lifters that are coaching in one way and helping another way, and you know, cross-contaminating, I suppose, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I guess like it's really cool, I think, because at the end of the day, yes, Uplift is its own team, but I take a lot of pride out of the fact that there's so many people who are off doing their own thing, having their own success. Like, for example, Jess has now also started her own team, being Defy, and she's lifting for Defy. Liz Nguyen, Queen of Nexus, she's representing Nexus as part of their athletes, and same with Jack Hamilton. Like he's got his own team, Compound, which honestly, like they're looking like they might be like running up towards the top. I actually think Compound might come first. So yeah, it's just really cool to actually have the everyone who is like part of it is just finding success in their own way, and like that's really what I wanted to build out of Uplift is to actually uplift others to actually do their very best and do cool shit for themselves.
That's actually freaking awesome, man. And something you should be very proud of. You've got this influence that goes across literally states to different businesses and whatnot. And so to have this kind of influence is, speaks a lot about yourself. So well done, mate. That's really, really good stuff. Yeah, Uplift, successful in the past. You've won a team champs in the past, 2023, I believe. And then knocked off your perch and then knocked out of the Premier bracket. But you're back in this year and you've got a really solid team. So, with a lot of the other teams, we talked a little bit about their coaching business and who they are and what they are. We've spoken to you a lot about that. Anybody that's worth their weight in powerlifting in Australia or Victoria at least will know who you are. But we want to talk a little bit about your team. So who are the lifters on your team this year? Who is representing Uplift? How did they come about? And let's have a little bit of a preview, hey?
Yeah, so first off the rank would be Alfred in the under 59s. I know how much you love that term under when we describe
it's the 59s, not the under 59s. But anyway, that's enough.
So he is moving into his first years of a junior. So he was a sub-junior last year and he did compete at the Worlds in Costa Rica. I've worked with him for just about a year now, and he's definitely someone who has an enormous amount of talent. I guess one of the big things that as any young man is getting into fresh out of high school is just that openness of everything that you need to do in life is fully on your own terms. Starting uni, being able to actually structure his day however he wants. Like, that's actually a really big thing that Alfred and I actually talk about throughout our coaching conversations, is what are the best ways to go about his day so he can find some structure, be able to commit towards his training, commit to his uni degree, which I believe he's doing engineering. So it's a pretty tough degree nonetheless, but yeah, just being able to juggle all these things along with a social life. I think that's actually a pretty important thing for any young person to be able to have in their life. But yeah, Alfred will be competing in the 59s, which at the moment there are only 2 competitors lined up, being Alfred and Jet out of Defy. Alfred may potentially move to the 66s, and I'm fully open to talk about this because from my perspective, I think with these changes of weight classes and any kind of deeper scouting for team champs specifically, I believe it's mostly helpful now with the new rules for teams that are wanting to actually switch athletes in and out or potentially switch a weight class. But for Alfred, the reason why we might go to 66s is just whether if it is even worth cutting down to the 59s just because he does sit a little bit heavier. And I've actually been advocating for him to go up to the 66s ever since after Worlds last year, just because I don't think it is a good idea for such a young man to be restricting his body weight, and I think he should really be able to put on quite a bit more muscle. But yeah, that's just something that may happen. We'll see by the cutoff tomorrow. But yeah, that's Alfred in the 59s. Going into
so before you go on there, Victor. So there's 2 lifters in the 59s. Jet Bolton is a really strong lifter, and I don't know a lot about Alfred, but I think he'd end up being a bit behind Jet because Jet will lift on day 1. Is Alfred a chance of beating Jet if he stays in 59s, or is Jet too far ahead?
So I do think Alfred could potentially win. I've loosely kept track of how Jet has been going, just because I think Jet's a really cool guy, and I met him. He was actually competing at the Fortress at the end of last year. So yeah, I think they actually may have a decentish battle, although it won't actually be a direct head-to-head. I guess given that Alfred is competing in the second day, it is pretty clear-cut in terms of how we spread out his total. So for lifts where, let's say, we shouldn't take as much risk, like a bench press or like a squat, then we'll just pace it out. And Alfred is a very, very strong deadlifter, and that's where if we can gain an extra 2.5 or 5, we might be able to take it there. But yeah, like I do think it's really cool to have a competition where Alfred can actually go and compete against open athletes, because he's obviously a junior at the moment and that's really where his competition's at. But yeah, I do think it could come down to the wire.
And so the 66 kilo category, though, is a little bit deeper. Like there's 4 lifters in there at the moment, and there are actually some reasonable talent in there. Would it be, like, tell me, because I'm not actually quite sure, is Alfred going to be competitive in that 66 group, or are you saying that it might be better for him to go up a weight class just for his like personal health and whatnot, rather than competitive reasons? Or are you saying that he would be very competitive and it would be actually more advantageous to compete in 66 because then you're taking points off other teams?
So from a pure competitive standpoint, Alfred would have a higher chance in the 59s.
Okay.
But if he moved up to the 66s, he would probably come second unless Gary does underperform. So Gary is an athlete who's moving down to the 66s. So based on previous performances, he has a much higher total, but that's at a higher weight class. Mm-hmm. He recently did compete at, I believe, ESS, and I think he weighed in at like 69 or something. So not all the way down, but relatively lighter. And he did lose a bit on his bench and his previous total, but it might also be the case that it was really just that day, because I was actually there at that comp, and the reason why he missed his bench was that he was cramping a lot and his butt kept coming off. So it may not actually be the best representation of his strength. It might be because he was cramping, it might not be. So based on pure potential, I believe that Alfred would have a better competitive standing in the 59s, but I'm just taking everything as the bigger picture. And if it isn't worth him making that cut down, then being in the 66s, he could still be quite competitive, but that also, of course, depends on how Gary shows up.
Yeah, interesting. So it's interesting to hear you say that competitively it would be in Uplift's interest that he stays at 59, but of course you're putting the well-being of the athlete kind of first and saying, hey, you need to actually take care of yourself, and if it's going to kill you to get down to 59, then it's not going to, you don't need to do it for us. Like, it's okay. Like, we can still be competitive in 66, and you don't need to pressure yourself into what might be an unhealthy cut.
Well, he did just recently compete in the 59s at Nationals just 4 weeks ago, and truthfully, it wasn't that difficult of a cut. He does weigh around 61 usually, so that's where my concerns is more so to do with the fact that he still needs to lose 2 kilos, which is about 4% body weight, but the difficulty of what he had to go through was little to none. So yeah, like it's more so the case of thinking about the future and whether it is worth doing this again, as I actually, even from Nationals, I thought he would compete as a 66, but he was adamant that he wanted to have one last crack at the 59s, and then one last crack just keeps on getting pushed on and on.
Yeah. Exactly right. Hey, look, before we move on and talk about your second lifter, Charles Sanders, I need to give a big shout out to Symmetry Physiotherapy, who are a major sponsor this year, rather than adding in an edited section. I thought I'd just bring it up now. Symmetry Physio are a physio clinic. There's 9 of them actually in Melbourne. We are liaising most closely with Taylor Lakes and Ascot Vale. And the physio that we've been dealing with there, her name is Megan Keeley, and she's actually awesome. We've been, at TSF, we've been dealing with her for over a year. We send a lot of our lifters there. She's an ex-AFLW player, a very talented physiotherapist, and more importantly, they're sponsoring and they're supporting our event. They're making sure that Team Champs runs to the best of its ability. That little bit of extra budget that comes in means that we can take things to another level. So for anybody that's listening to this, when you turn up to Team Champs for yourself, Victor, when you see the level and the production quality and how professional it all is, keep in mind that a lot of that was thanks to Symmetry Physiotherapy. So if you need some loving and to fix your shit up, go seek out Megan Keeley at Symmetry Physio, Ascot Vale, or Taylor's Lakes. Victor, your second lifter is Charles Sanders in the 93 kilo category, a name and a face we've seen much before. Talk to us a little bit about Charles.
So Charles was actually the head coach for Uplift last year whilst I was traveling, and yeah, it was pretty crazy because Charles, he was actually planning on going to Worlds just as a massive fan of the sport. And I think that already tells a lot about his character, given that not many people do travel to Worlds just to watch unless they have friends or family that is competing. And yeah, it was pretty cool because Charles ended up staying a little bit later just to coach the team. He was quite flexible in terms of his travel dates to actually fly up. So he coached the team last year, and then I'm pretty sure either that night or the next morning flew up to Chemnitz to actually hang out at the Worlds. So yeah, like Charles is someone who is a massive contributor towards the team for what he has done. He's also helped with coaching many of the athletes over the last couple of years. Charles is a coach himself. He works out of South Yarra Fitness, if I can remember the gym's name correctly. And
South Yarra Strength.
South Yarra Strength. Yeah, that would definitely sound a lot nicer. But yeah, it's a general fitness gym where he does mostly face-to-face. He does coach a dozen amount of powerlifters. But yeah, Charles is someone who isn't really the most chatty and out there person, but one of the smartest people I know. He is someone who also is like an encyclopedia of powerlifting, similar to Ari, where they know a lot about the sport. And it's actually his first time competing as part of Uplift for the team champs, and actually everyone part of the Uplift team is a new competitor. Like they haven't actually done team champs before, which is also quite cool. But yeah, Charles is going to be competing in the under 93s. The 93s is also going to be a pretty stacked class, which we're going to see what we're going to be able to do. My thinking of strategy regarding team champs is that we're thinking of all the game day scouting, like I mentioned before, is going to mostly be impactful for everything before the competition. Once the roster or the team is set in stone, then it's more so about maximizing the standings and the placements of what is the individual battles. The only times where I think it might be a little bit more beneficial is probably towards the later parts of the day or towards the last few lifters of the team. That's where you may decide to not be as aggressive with the competition, maybe coming second or third. That's all that's needed to actually increase the team's ranking. But it's exactly like a regular competition. I kind of like to see it as if we're coaching a subtotal athlete where they have a really strong squat and bench, you just aim to maximize what you can, and then let the cards be dealt, the ball's in the opponent's court. Whereas if we're towards the end, then it's more so like a deadlift hero. We take what we need in order to actually increase the most out of the ranking. And Charles is actually the second athlete part of the team. So therefore, we're going to just go about it by maximizing what we can do out of the day. Charles is looking quite strong, and we've been actually trialing some different programming strategies for him ever since his last comp in Southern Showdown last year. One of the big changes that we've actually made with Charles's training is that we've gone with a much higher frequency approach, meaning that he is squatting 3, deadlifting 3, and benching 5 days. This is a bit more than what Charles was doing previously, but he seems to actually be responding really well towards the higher volume, and it's really just a meaningful way to spread out volume across multiple sessions instead of doing too much on once. But yeah, like it's pretty cool to actually see how Charles has been able to really pick up his pacing, and I'm thinking that Charles will actually have a really significant PB on his bench press, maybe even like plus 10 to 12 from what he's previously done. But yeah, we'll see how things do play out with Charles.
So like you said, he's in the 93 kilo category. You mentioned treating it like a subtotal athlete. Like for those that might have missed it, you know, Charles being a 93 kilo and you've got four lifters, he'll be the early part of the day. Like your other 2 lifters yet to speak about, they're going to lift later in the day. So it's like you don't know how the rest of the day is going to go. So all you got to do is just maximize Charles' performance and then it'll be a little bit more game of cat and mouse later in the day with Callum and I forget your fourth, but your heavier lifters. The other interesting thing is there's 10 in the group. We mentioned that it's a big group. One of those lifters in that 10 is withdrawing, actually, and that's not a secret. That's from process powerlifting, and so there's 9 in the group effectively. It's going to be a deep field. I mean, 9 is still many lifters, and Charles, strong lifter, but not the favorite by any stretch of the imagination. So I am curious to see how that session pans out and how competitive Charles can be in that group, and if he can pick up some points. If you finish top 4, then you pick up points. If you finish 5th or beyond, you're kind of leaving points on the table. So interesting bet on the 93s. All right, Victor, your third lifter. Who am I forgetting?
So third lifter is in the under 105s, Dean Chen.
Of course.
Yes. So Dean is a absolute veteran of powerlifting. He's been powerlifting since 2013. So it's going into his 14th year of doing powerlifting this year, which is truly amazing. Dean, being such a veteran, is also someone who, which I love, he's taken on board a lot of the old school powerlifting quirks towards his lifting. I guess just for a bit of context, Dean is someone who is generally quite introverted, a very quiet, kind of kept to himself guy. He's made a lot of his closest friends off Reddit forums for keyboards. So definitely someone who generally is very nerdy, quite chilled out. But when he is on the platform, my God, I don't think I've seen anyone get as hyped up as Dean. There's photos of him where he is just bashing his own face, smacking himself and just getting so amped up. And yeah, it's just really cool to actually have someone who has brought on board that old school way of powerlifting, because honestly, these days, I just don't really see people get that hyped up and it actually being beneficial. Whereas for Dean, he's someone who, given that his experience in the sport is so extensive, he can really unlock that next gear when he digs in, conjures up the demons, and is able to actually bring forth his best performance.
Now, he's in the 105 kilo category. Like you said, been lifting for a long time, 13, 14 years. Again, the 105s is a very, very deep class, just like the 93s. I think it's 11 lifters in that group. I'm looking at them, and there's some big names in there, man. Tyson Andrews, Hung Fan, Gabe Bluetooth of Apex. Some really, really heavy hitters. Dean himself is a very strong lifter, 700 kilo plus total. How do you see Dean's chances in that category?
I think Dean has a pretty good shot to podium. I think the first place is probably going to be very set in stone by Hung, unless something terrible happens. Maybe Dean and I can go back and break his legs before his deadlift or something. But Hung's probably going to be really firmly in front. I believe Tyson Andrews is probably going to be the runner up, but it also does depend on the decisions made on attempt selection for Tyson. Tyson has definitely got the higher potential relative to Dean, and Dean and I actually have spoken about this. It really will depend on the day. Dean is also someone who has historically not made that many lifts in competition, so it is definitely the case where we're going to really focus on maximizing the total. This is actually the first comp Dean and I have done together since I've worked with him as a coach. He's actually someone I've known for my entire powerlifting life. When I joined powerlifting when I was 16, he was one of my first friends within powerlifting. So it's actually quite nice for it to kind of come full circle and me taking him to one of his bigger comps that he has done in a very long time. But the play that we are going to really consider is that we're not going to worry too much about individual lift PBs, because he's probably going to get decently close to them. But if he can string together a really good day and make lifts, I believe that is probably the most feasible way for us to actually bolster our standings and potentially come third or second out of the 105s.
I mean, a second or third result in the 105 in that category, especially like we said with Hung in there, it would be a really, really good result. 10 lifters. I think the other thing that's important to acknowledge for people listening is placing high not only scores you points, but it also denies other teams points. And so if you can score well, it's taking points away from someone else. If you finish second and third or fourth, second and third, then the guy that finished third missed out on points also. And so not only does your team get pushed up, another team gets pushed down. And especially in categories where you've got a lot of other strong lifters from competitive teams, it can really be like a 2 or 3 point turnaround. I mean, it's one thing to take points off, a challengers team who you're not really kind of facing in the overall standings. But if you're taking points off a team like Stronghold Ballarat, if you're taking points off a team like, Elemental, obviously Hung's going to win that. But if you can beat someone like Hung, that's a really big dent in one of the stronger teams' team scores. So, Dean, super strong lifter. Didn't quite make it to nationals this year, but I'm looking forward to seeing him on our platform.
It's funny that you do mention that point because within the current standings in the under 57s, Sophie Dobson, part of Compound, is definitely someone who is looking like they're going to come up on top. But Jess is also going to be competing in the 57s. At the moment, she's put down as a 52, but I guess a bit of a sneak peek. I don't think it's really that big of a reveal. She's going to be moving up to the 57. So to that point of taking points off teams, that is something that I think is somewhat relevant. Even though Jess is not representing Uplift, it is exactly that point of what you just said.
Yeah, it's almost like this is the challenging thing about like maintaining total integrity in a sport like this. Like, of course, this isn't. I'm not suggesting at all that there's any break in integrity, but there are like these little types of like mini decisions that can actually have flow-on effects. So, for example, Jess Lou, you've just revealed, going to lift at 57 instead of 52 kilos. That takes away points of Compound potentially,
and
of course,
the decision was not in any way regarding to take points off Compound. It was that Jess definitely will not make it to
52s, of course,
for this comp. And if she were to do it, she would do it at a bigger comp later in the year, maybe SBD Cup.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, another example of this idea of like kind of collaborating in a way, I don't know. Like one idea that came to my mind is like talking about the 59s and whatnot. It's like just Jet Bolton lifts on day one. So like if he totals 500 or if he totals 300, he's going to win. And so maybe, not that I would suggest that anybody would ever do this because this would be quite unsportsmanlike, but maybe
you're suggesting
Jet and say, hey, Jet, just total 300 for us. That way you still win, you still get full points, and then we can also get full points the next day, and that actually scores us well for us. So there is this like element of like, the thing is everybody knows everybody. Everybody's friends with everybody, like you mentioned. You coach freaking half the other coaches, so it's impossible to like totally, totally like pull apart the like knowledge, I suppose, and like the collaboration between teams, but things like that can kind of happen. I mean, yeah, it's just the nature of the event, right? Everybody knows everybody. You're refereeing, your own freaking partner's refereeing you, and your coach is your competitor, and like everybody is kind of like interacting in that way. So it does make for interesting dynamics for sure.
It does, but I also do think that I have not seen, or I've only seen once where a immoral decision has been made to benefit their own agenda. I think with like all of these things, they just happen to be the case of how it is, and we can draw like meaning behind what is happening, but sometimes things are just happening the way that they are. Like just for the example of Jess, like she's not going to make it to 52s, so she will compete as a 57. Initially, when Jess put herself down, it was definitely just as a placeholder because the intent was not to do team champs, whereas now she is deciding on doing team champs. So yeah, like in terms of Jess's training, like we're literally just doing conventional high bar squats where we're doing an approach that is not really peaking her towards her top end strength, but I think it's still going to be really fun to be able to do it anyway. And also on the day itself, she's still going to try her best no matter what. So I think that's what really matters, is that it's giving opportunities for athletes to actually be able to have these competitions, because the thing that I find really special about Team Champs is that it gives athletes that may not usually have the opportunity to have really tight battles, say at nationals, to have meaningful competition. And that's what makes it so special to me, is that it gives so many people this opportunity to actually have that dog within them to actually fight for a competition. And yeah, it's just so unique in that standpoint. And of course, on top of that, they're not only just fighting for themselves, but also part of their team.
Love what you have to say there, Victor. I appreciate that. And I totally agree with you. I'm with you on that. Giving lifters the opportunity to have meaningful battles, I think, is the key. You know, like even at a local comp, I've had this conversation many a time where I say, hey, if you deadlift 175, that'll be silver, or you can go for 170, or you can go for 180 and that'll be gold. And they go, I'll just do 175. It doesn't matter to me, you know, because it's nice to take home a nice medal. And for a lot of people that medal matters, but it doesn't actually affect anything. Whereas, you know, like in a result like this, it really feels like, okay, I'm doing this for the team. I'm doing this for a bigger result, not just my result. So I think the other thing that I wanted to comment on, one reason why I find Team Champ so special is because it brings all the other teams together. Like, it brings everyone together in one day. You know, like you said, you've got good relationships with all these other different clubs. You're coaching a lot of other different people. And there's so many, like, networks. You know, I imagine this massive, like, spider web of networks where everyone knows everyone in some way. But it just brings us all together on the same day. All the coaches come together. You share a warm-up room. You cooperate. You collaborate. You network. Have a fun time. Lift big weights. It's going to be good. Okay,
Absolutely.
Fourth lifter. We've got to get moving on. Callum Maynard, also a first-timer at Team Champs in the 120-plus category.
Yeah, so Callum, throughout most of his powerlifting career, he has competed in the 120s, whereas over the last couple of years, he, by no intentional decision, has just steadily continued to get heavier. He has actually been able to continue to put on muscle. Funnily enough, Callum is actually quite a light super heavyweight. So he sits at about 130, 132, hovering around there. So only a little bit above the class of 120s. But he's probably also the fittest super heavyweight in powerlifting in the world. Like, I'll get updates from Callum, and instead of sending me through his training footage, he'll send me through his Strava. He'll send me through like his bike rides, and then he'll send me through like his registration to do a half marathon around Albert Park Lakes. So it's actually really amazing to actually see that he's able to uphold really high fitness levels. He absolutely would have a higher VO2 max than myself, like without a doubt, and still be able to really excel within the sport. I guess the coolest thing is that he'll send me through these things, and then he'll do his main squat session the day after, and he is just absolutely obliterating it. As of recently, he hit a double at his comp PB from December last year. So it wasn't even that long ago in terms of where he was at, but I actually do attribute a lot of the fitness stuff that he's been doing externally as being beneficial, because ever since he's been fitter, he's also been able to handle a lot more training volume to be able to recover from. So we've been actually smashing a lot more higher volume high bars, being able to actually get in meaningful work out of his primary accessory movements. And it's honestly had such a significant impact on his strength levels, where he's doubling his previous comp PB, and that was already a 12 and a half or so PB from the last comp.
It's interesting. He's in the 120 plus kilo category. He's improving, but he's going to have a hard time. Some big names in there. Tony Reinmuth, Aaron Carew in the 120 plus as he lifted there last year. Jason Oakley, also a very strong lifter. Ruben Treverson. So it's going to be a challenging weight class. How do you see Callum scoring in that field?
So ideally, I think it will be quite similar to Dean, in the sense where Tony Reinmuth is definitely just going to be up on top. Even if Callum and I went up to the warm-up room and tried to break his legs, it would not work.
I don't think he would be able to.
Nah. And I'll just look at him as like, man, he's just too nice. He's such a nice dude. Like, Tony's also someone who's known me since I was 16. So we have like a really good friendship that goes like many years back. But yeah, like, he's going to be so far up ahead. It's crazy because he's actually doing Worlds just a week or two afterwards. So
2 weeks later, yeah.
I assume that he's probably just going to take this comp as perhaps his final singles before Worlds, just to get a reveal of what that top end can be. But yeah, he's just so far ahead where he's so secure, locked in. I guess the person that I believe will come second is Aaron Carew from SR Collective. He's definitely quite a strong athlete on paper, and I do think he has a pretty decent shot at coming second. But once again, we don't know what the day has in store. We don't know what Callum is going to lift. So yeah, I guess it's just really to maximize what is on the day. I believe they're probably going to be pacing quite similarly in terms of their subtotal for squat and bench. I think Aaron might have a little bit more of a bench, but yeah, we'll just see how the day plays.
Now it's Wednesday currently, the 13th of May, so 2 days out from final changes. Are there any changes that you're expecting from some teams? Like you've got some inside word, obviously you mentioned Just Lou. Are there other nominations that you think might be changed? Like one, for example, that comes to mind while we're speaking about it is Aaron Carew last year lifted at 120. I know that the guys at SI Collective are very competitive and very strategic. I do wonder, is that Aaron Carew in 120 plus, is that a fake? Are they going to go back down to 120? Do you expect some movement in the final changes this Friday?
Honestly, I got no idea. And I don't think it does it. Even if I had any indication, I don't think it would really change any of my own decisions, because it's not gonna, like the athletes I'm coaching, they're not really able to move up or down a weight class apart from Alfred. So yeah, I'm actually not very sure, but if things do end up moving, it may change the board in terms of how things start, but it doesn't change how I will approach the day, because it will absolutely still be maximizing the athletes within their own weight classes.
Awesome, man. And I have to ask, who are your predictions? Who's going to take out? I don't know if you've looked at the challenge bracket much. Interestingly, actually doing all these interviews, a lot of the challenge brackets haven't looked at the premier bracket teams, but I suspect a lot of the premier bracket teams will have had to have looked at the challenger bracket teams, because you are facing all of them anyway. But do you have any predictions for challengers and of course for the whole competition overall?
Yeah, so I think out of the challenges, in no specific order, I would put Defy, Strength Syndicate, and either Adaptive or Nexus up there. And that's just me looking at the athletes list without really going through and having that deep dive in open powerlifting. And out of the premiers, I'd say Compound definitely has the best chances of winning. Process is also looking quite good, but I didn't even know that one of the athletes got swapped out.
He's getting swapped out. Yeah.
Who is it particularly?
So Claudia O'Shea is going to be lifting this instead of Richard Chalik in the 93s.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I guess that's going to happen. And I think ESS is definitely looking very strong.
Which is another
as well.
57, actually. So I'm just going to interrupt you. So
Yeah.
Claudia's in, that's another 57. Jess Lou's another 57. And I do have a feeling, which I will not reveal, that there might be another 57 incoming as well. So I will let that reveal come on Saturday. So 57 they're going to go off.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So it's going to be quite a stacked class there, but I do think Sophie Dobson is a really strong athlete, where when she is able to really compose herself to execute, I do think she is quite unstoppable. So I wouldn't rule Sophie out in that standpoint either.
I love it, man. I love it. Victor, I want to say big thanks for your time today. You're obviously a big fan of Team Champs. You've come back every year. You've won one. Hopefully, Uplift have a good year this year. You stay in the challenge, stay in the Premier bracket, and then maybe you can go for title number 2 in the future. Like I said, I appreciate your time. Best of luck with the last couple of weeks of training. Don't forget to send me your official decision on Alfred before Friday, and I'll see you in 3 weeks.
Thank you, JP.